Greetings, my legion of screenlings. It is I, your black screen overlord of cringe, or the cancer of cringe, or cancerous cringe. Nevertheless, I digress. Today I want to bring to you something very, very important, that's very dear, that's very personal to my heart, and bring a piece by a man who inspired me to make the content that I make today, to stoke the flames, as it were, or to fire the nethers, fire one's nethers. Such an inspiration to me. A seminal moment this piece of literature was, and I wish to honour his legacy, his life's work, with this posthumous tribute. We will never forget you, our doctor, my doctor. Now I will honour you. Great doctor. Let us begin. I'll be doing my best voice for this. So prepare yourself. A Hoofs On Education by Brutal Ass Master. Remember. The rain poured down outside the library windows, filling the air with a kind of strange rhythm that was both random and familiar. Ponyville was quiet, not much quieter than it had been a few hours earlier, when a cranky-some miner had destroyed half the town. Twilight Sparkle sighed, as she stared at the large pile of books on her table, not looking forward to the hours of studying before her, as she was so tired and strangely confused by the day's events. When she had first seen Trixie, she had been worried about her position as Ponyville's top magician, but realized really quickly that there was no real threat from this new blue unicorn. Still, there was something strangely arousing about having another unicorn in town, who could even hope to rival her in magical abilities. And Twi was much too tired to think about it much, opting to face the large books and scrolls and lose herself in learning. And she opened the first book and stared blankly at the title page. "How did this get in my study pile?" she thought aloud, closing nifty tricks for sticky situations, and opening the next one. "Seriously?" she shouted, throwing the newly offending book across the room. The Kama Sutra hit a shelf and opened to a page with a picture of two unicorns, and Twilight, in spite of herself, was curious to see what in Equestria those two ponies were doing. She approached the book hesitantly, as if it could explode at any moment, and then explode again. When she saw the picture, however, she immediately felt herself go bright red. The two female unicorns, for this was the Kama Sutra after all, were lying on top of each other. One had her snout deep between the other's legs, but the other she had stuck her horn right into. Twilight felt her legs give out underneath her. She was no prude, and she had seen something similar once in her parents' drawer, but it was not so much what she saw on the page, but what she saw in her mind as she had seen that picture of those two unicorns in that strange position. An image of two unicorns, not just some generic drawing, had sprung into her mind. "How can I think of Trixie like that, after she was so mean to me and my friends?" But the mind does not lie, and the heat she felt in her cheeks was nothing compared to the heat she felt between her legs. Her virgin orifice swelling and wetting itself like there was no tomorrow. It was at that moment the bell rang. Twilight flew into a blind panic. If Spike had been there, she would have sent him to get it instead. But he was out trying to seduce Rarity with his new stash. "Who is it?" she called tentatively. No pony answered. "Oh, pony feathers," she said, pulling herself back up, donning a robe quickly, and cantering towards the door. "And this had to cover most of it. Well, enough for me to get rid of whoever's calling at this time of night." She froze, however, when she opened the door and saw who it was. A drenched and bedraggled Trixie she stood, ears low, tail between her legs, on Twilight's doorstep. "I'm sorry to bother you," she started to say, but stopped short when she saw who opened the door. She immediately turned and started to leave. "Wait!" shouted Twilight. "Why am I calling her back? Don't go! No pony should be out in this weather." But you hate me, and I hate you," muttered Trixie. "That doesn't mean I want you to get sick out in this weather." And Trixie begrudgingly turned around and went back inside and shot Twilight a contemptuous look as she crossed the threshold. "Fine, but I'm leaving as soon as the storm is over." "Fine with me," Twi snapped as she went into the kitchen to make some orange pekoe tea. She levitated the box off the shelf and placed it. Herbal Green's Finest was printed in large letters on the box, and Twilight wondered vaguely if said Herbal Green actually drank his own product. On the counter, she had just put some water on to boil when a voice called from the other room. "I see I'm interrupting something," came Trixie's snide teasing from the back room, where the Kama Sutra was still open on the floor. "Oh, Buck!" She ran into the room and saw to her horror that the blue unicorn was laying in front of the book, paging through it, a strange look on her face. I was just..." "Was just what? Thinking about how alone you were on a cold night like this? Thinking about how lovely it would be for another unicorn to do this with you?" Her hoof pointed towards the page Twi had seen earlier, the one with the two unicorns on top of each other, their faces in places not known to Twilight. "Were you thinking about that rarity friend of yours? How good her horn would feel inside of you? Teasing you? Thinking about..." But she had got no further, as she had seen the look in Twilight's face, and suddenly some fear crept into the back of her mind. She was drooling, and had a look that Trixie had only seen in those of the woodland animals when their time had come to make their families grow, as the older ponies had told the fillies and colts who asked. "You just made a big mistake," said Twilight, letting her robe fall to the ground, exposing her swollen and glistening wet pussy to the air, as she started to walk slowly towards Trixie, who instead of walking sat back on her haunches and stared powerlessly at Twilight as she crossed the last few steps between them and locked her lips with Trixie's. She gasped around Twilight, so she took the advantage of her temporary surprise to invade her mouth with her tongue. The moment their tongues made contact, the feeling blew Twi away. She never really knew how hot and wet another tongue would feel, tracing crazy patterns across her own, but took heart at the fact that Trixie had not pulled away, but instead started to fight against her with her own. They pulled apart, a glistening strand of saliva connecting their tongues for a moment, and Twilight looked down and saw that she was no longer the only aroused one. In Trixie's own had become so wet, so pretty. Twi just had to have it. Without words she lay on her back, showing Trixie what she had to offer, in return for her own delicious juices. "Well?" she asked, loving the way Trixie blushed as she beheld Twilight's magnificent plot. Slowly Trixie lowered her head between Twilight's haunches, but was quickly stopped by her back leg. As she held her away, "I want to be that picture. I want that to be us," she whispered, her voice reduced to a throaty purr by her arousal, and Trixie's blush turned into a beetroot red complexion. As she turned around, her flanks centering themselves over Twilight's head, she started to lick at the wetness right before her nose, the texture and smell arousing her beyond belief. And then Twilight completed the pose, her horn sliding effortlessly into Trixie's pussy with a wet schlick, and she felt some of her hot juices seep out and settle on her forehead, and Trixie screamed with pleasure. Forgetting her own task for a moment, as she revelled in pure ecstasy, Twilight would have none of this, though. She didn't want to be the only one doing all the work, after all. Wrapping her back legs around Trixie's head, she moved her head back between her haunches, putting her whole snout into her vag, smearing her face and forehead with her thick, hot unicorn juices. And Trixie spluttered for a second, prompting Twilight to relinquish some of her hold on her. But she still began moving her horn slowly up and down inside Trixie, creating satisfying noises every time she thrust her horn into her, and Trixie's squeaks of pleasure muffled by Twilight's tight minge were bringing Twi close, very close to orgasm. She knew Trixie was close too. The copious amounts of juices now flowing down her face onto her snout were enough to tell her that. "Trixie, I'm so close," she panted between thrusts and licks, finally unable to hold it back any longer. She came, squirting thick strands of unicorn sauce onto Trixie, who lapped it up eagerly, relishing the sweet, candy taste of her new lover. She was quickly distracted by Twilight, who in her ecstasy grabbed Trixie's plot and slammed her horn all the way into her tight pussy. Globs of cum floated onto Twilight's face, and their thick smell enveloping her in a warm cloud, intensifying her own orgasm. Slowly the pleasure subsided, both unicorns panting, horn to vag to snout, embracing each other. Twilight turned around to face Trixie, eyes shining, face wet and dripping. "Whoa, you really are great and powerful after all," she whispered, licking her juices off of Trixie's face. "But you still got me with that horn of yours." "In the end," giggled Trixie, nuzzling Twilight's horn, eliciting a small squeak from her purple lover. Both unicorns started to laugh, their chests heaving against each other. Their laughter was so loud that both failed to notice the sound of the door opening and closing, and footsteps coming into the room. Twilight?" said a confused voice from the doorway. Spike was home. That just brings back so memories. This was so beautiful to me. This was this is the great Doctor's epitaph, and it was an honour to read this and to perform this for you. And Never forget. Never forget. Always remember. R.I.P. DrClop. Good day. Thank you. It has been an honour. This is my proudest moment. Thank you.